Texas Tech fans are loving Joey McGuire. And I agree with the question from the listener, because there have been so many examples of a fan base that's all in on their new hire, and they point to the improvement in the recruiting rankings, and they buy up those season tickets, and they're loving all the stories they're hearing from the high school coaches. And then oftentimes, more often than not, it doesn't quite live up to those sky-high expectations. So I guess the two parts of this that, for our purposes, number one, thoughts on Joey McGuire, Texas Tech, and then number two, so where can Texas Tech fans look to for examples of the home run hire actually hit?
Georgia.
Kirby?
All of us who are not in the Georgia fan base said, hey, like, firing Mark Richt, be careful what you wish for. He's had great results there. The recruiting has been good, even very good for a lot of the time. And Georgia fans are like, no, we should do better. And you know what? That's your right as a fan base. You give us a booster, you buy those season tickets, you can demand more if you're willing to pay for it. And Georgia certainly is willing to pay for it. Like, that's the one that sticks out to me. I kind of reject the premise of the Clemson example. Chip, you were covering ACC at the time as well.
Kappa was not a home run hire.
No, he was not universally loved at the time. They did not want him at all in many cases. That was TDP, their athletic director, standing on the table and saying, I think this is the right guy, in the face of quite a lot of criticism.
They lost the Elk Bowl to South Florida, and they wanted him out. Then he went to hire Chad Morris. They came back the next season and won the ACC for the first time in 20 years.
There's examples all over. I mean, you could give, on the flip side, what about Nebraska? Nebraska was Bo Pelini, and they were kind of like Georgia fans. Hey, we're a tradition-rich program. We had all those titles in the 90s. This 9 wins isn't getting it done. And then it goes the other way. Like, you think you're going for a new direction. It goes completely the opposite. I don't know. I feel like Texas Tech would have been better off for somebody to stand up and say, why are we going to do this now? Matt Wells just had his first signs of improvement, and now you want to make the change? This to me is a fan base that's a little bit delusional, as far as Georgia and Texas Tech, clearly different programs. What Mark Richt had done at Georgia was really get close to breaking through, inches in some circumstances of getting that next level. And they did, and they got greedy and said, no, we can get better. And they were right about that. But what is Texas Tech's ceiling? Where can they break through to? I think their best opportunity is when Oklahoma and Texas leave for the SEC. Then maybe it opens up, and that might be the best opportunity for them to advance. And I think they will. That will be huge for them. The fact they won't have to go through those two teams. But I know Mike Leach set a standard there, but if you look over the history of Texas Tech football, it's not exactly, there aren't many double-digit win seasons. So, can McGuire get them to 8 wins? I think that'd be a huge, massive success for them in the near-term future. But I'd say the more likelihood is with a reset, they're probably going to be back to being 5 or 6 wins this season, and maybe, it depends on how long it takes.
Yeah, it's kind of an apples and oranges comparison, because when the Georgia example, and I remember too, I kind of felt the same way you're talking about, but where most of us felt. My other thought to hiring Kirby was, you're not only are you getting rid of Richt, but you're going to hire a Saban assistant, and we've seen how well that works for every other school in the SEC that does it. But that's clearly worked for them. But even before that, that was a team that was competing for SEC titles already. And when you would ask coaches about the Georgia job, that was a lot of coaches said it was a top 5 job in the country. All of them had it in the top 10. Nobody looks at the Texas Tech job the same way. And the reason for that is because you can win national titles at Georgia with the conference that you're in, the talent base that you have, and just your pull in that state. You've got national title ceiling. I don't think Texas Tech has anything close to a national title ceiling, but going back to what you were saying, Danny, this is a really interesting time in the Big 12, in that when Texas and Oklahoma leave, there's going to be a power vacuum. And you've got 4 new schools coming in, and you've got the schools that are still going to remain. And there's kind of going to be a race to see who can get their foot in the door to kind of, grab the ring or the crown, whatever you want to call it, to see who can become that new dominant program. Because if there's one thing that history has shown, even as conferences change and affiliations change and they expand or they shrink or they disappear, there's always that one dominant program in every single conference for at least a certain period of time. And we don't know who that Big 12 team is going to be. So there is an opportunity, if Joey McGuire gets off to a really good start at Texas Tech, maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. The timing is perfect. Everything works out perfectly. And Texas Tech suddenly becomes a power. I don't think that is a very likely outcome. And the fact that we can't come up with a whole lot of examples of it working out that way kind of proves that it's probably not going to happen.
Jim Harbaugh, universally praised. Took a while, but Big Ten title, college football playoff appearance.
It's bigger, but it's a different. I think that's a great comp to Georgia.
Yeah, I don't think Michigan and Texas Tech are the same thing.
No, but I was trying to scale it. I was trying to remove if for Texas Tech not breaking through to make college football playoffs, because you're right about reasonable expectations, but a leveling up. Michigan football has leveled up under Jim Harbaugh, and by beating Ohio State and winning the Big Ten for the first time since 2004, I would consider 2021 a breakthrough season for Jim Harbaugh, somebody who was universally acclaimed and praised by the fan base and by even those outside.
Yeah, but Michigan also used to be a program that won national titles. So it's leveled up from the downturn of the Rich Rod, Brady Hoke kind of, collapse. But I don't think it's back to what it was yet.
I think but
it's a program that's only won one title in 75 years.
Yeah, I think it was
they've
a Big
also
Ten.
played at like a top 10 level a lot of times.
True.
So is Texas Tech a top half job in the new Big 12?
Well, I don't, because I was going to ask you guys.
No. It's too far away. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and it doesn't have the same financial commitment to me as a Baylor does. Like Baylor as a university clearly wants to be really, really good at sports and pays up like crazy. I mean, would you rather have UCF or Texas Tech? UCF. Yeah. Would you rather have Houston, Cincinnati, right? Like, would you rather have BYU? I think I'd rather have BYU in there.
Probably BYU.
TCU easily, SMU, I think so, even though I know they're new to the P5, but it's geography for me. Like you can evaluate your ass off and you still have to get to kids to come all the way out there. And I think that is, regardless of coach, a huge limiting factor for sustained high-level success. You can be really good there in spurts, but I think Joey McGuire is probably a good hire for them. He seems to know the landscape, but it won't be through getting a whole bunch of 4 stars and 5 stars to come there. It's going to be because of his high school recruiting connections that he knows which kids to pass on, so they make fewer mistakes and they get more kids that fit their culture. Which, to me, if you're going to be in like outside the top 20, I don't really care how many 4 stars you have. A lot of times those 4 stars you're getting, if you're like a top, if you're like ranked 28, are probably 4 stars who we missed on, who are like some of the bad 4 stars who have serious character stuff. Get kids that fit your program and fit what you want to run.
If there was a situation here, because we've talked in the NIL era, if there was a program that got 1 or 2 boosters a little bit crazy and they want to shell out the Tennessee number, the $25 million a year, and see if we can buy ourselves a championship. And that's the only thing really that changes this discussion, right? Is if they have some sort of situation like that.
Go get you a billionaire. Forget your coach.
Right.
I would rather have Texas Tech than SMU. I would rather have Texas Tech than Kansas State. Obviously over Kansas.
Yeah.
Didn't Texas Tech try to get Sonny Dykes, or am I imagining that? Is that a couple years ago?
Spike was
the coach there
Texas
for a long
Tech.
time.
Yeah, so that was sort of the connection always there.
What about Iowa State?
Oh, Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
West Virginia?
That's sort of that same range.
Similar.
Yeah.
Geography kills you.
I'm just imagining, but if I'm totally wrong, please snap me up on this. But I'm just imagining that there's that opportunity of when you're going to see these teams playing high school football, when you're going to talk with these coaches, there's just a wider net that you've got. There's players that are going to be late bloomers. There's going to be players that develop a little bit later. Maybe they didn't start playing football. And I just think that Texas Tech has an opportunity to scoop up enough of those to be a top half of the new Big 12 kind of program.
I think Coca in our group chat here had a nice example of maybe a good comp for Texas Tech, and that is Minnesota's hire of PJ Fleck, which was widely seen as a very good hire for Minnesota. And while they're not winning division titles or the Big Ten, has had very good results for that Minnesota program. They've had a couple, 10-win seasons. They beat Auburn in a bowl game. They're trending in the right direction. So maybe that's a better comp than the Georgias of the world.
To illustrate my point a little bit, what is the biggest city that you think is within a 4-hour drive
Of Lubbock?
of Lubbock, Texas?
Dallas.
New
No.
Mexico.
Dallas is almost 6.
Is it El Paso?
I'm trying to think where I flew to. I covered
El
Gainesville.
Paso is 300 miles by plane, 343 by car.
So
So
no.
unless you're driving 80,
Ugh. Well, I mean, in West Texas, honestly, you could drive 100 and nobody there is going to know because
like the west edge of Fort Worth is 314 miles.
Mm.
Houston is 9 hours, 8 hours, depending on what part of Houston.
God,
Like
Texas
it's in
is so
Texas, but
huge.
it's not really in the part of Texas that helps you from a recruiting advantage standpoint. Like Albuquerque is closer than a lot of these other cities.
For
That's
context
just
of like
Mexico.
Roswell, you can get
yeah.
some aliens.
the context of like the size of Texas as far as the width, like to get from El Paso, which is probably the furthermost west in the state, to the other end, like maybe to the Louisiana border, is a 12-hour drive. Like think of where you are right now and how far you can get in 12 hours. That is just the state of
I
Texas.
think to you.
Yeah. No, I think it's about 15 hours between
Okay.
Raleigh and Chicago, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, tack on me getting lost in the hill country, you know,
I could easily get to Chip.
in 12
Well under
hours.
12. Yeah,
Mhm.
probably
Yeah.
10. Yeah. And that's
Yeah,
like
you can go
halfway up the
Lauderdale-
coast. Like that's
Lauderdale
about
to
halfway
Raleigh?
up the coast, you know?
95, baby, just cooking.
Yeah. Just shoot. I made that drive a lot. Oof, it's a long one.
I know
Are
I
you
can
doing
get
the
to
thing like that
Atlanta in
astronaut
12
did,
hours.
where you're peeing in the Gatorade bottle and stuff, and so you're not stopping?
Wait, hold on. We just call that astronaut? I thought that was just a thing normal people do too.
No. There's a story I'm referencing. You guys remember this? The lady who drove from like Houston
Oh,
to
God, yeah.
Florida
In
to
the diaper?
little revenge plot. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's wearing the diaper in the car.
Yes.
Yeah, 11 hours 9 minutes for Danny to Chip.
Yeah. Do
No
that
stops,
easily.
baby.
And that's the distance that it would be to get
Just to
across,
get across
Texas.
Texas. Yeah.
Good luck, Joey McGuire. You didn't. I'm sorry to our beloved listener who was hoping that he would hear that Texas Tech can be the next Clemson and level up, but we're going to need to see it. But there will be an opportunity, as we mentioned, in the remade Big 12.